back to another episode of the Parisi Podcast. We have a Zoomer. We have a new face, someone I just met 11 minutes ago, maybe 10 minutes ago. We've got Brian Roy on the pod today. I'm going to let Brian introduce himself here in a minute. If you're watching on YouTube, you will see Brian's lovely face and my overly glared face. I got a lot of glare coming down on the top, Brian, so just bear with me if I'm on your side of the screen. But if you're listening, just tune in. Hopefully you have a cup of coffee or something to enjoy, because I feel like this is going to be a phenomenal conversation, something that I'm excited for. But we are going to introduce Brian. Brian, how are you? Welcome.
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much, Casey, for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm feeling a little intimidated because you have like a nice, a coastal twang.
Thank you.
I'm a Northeast guy. Yeah. There's no twang here. Maybe a little abrasive. I'm not sure. Yeah. You have an easy listening voice.
Yes, but it's hard to get people motivated, like fired up when you're just like, look, just kind of.
No, I like it. If you have a podcast voice. You have a podcast.
I'll take that. Well,
that is intended to be a compliment. I have a face for podcasting. You have a voice for podcasting.
Oh, thank you. I think you're doing great, though. I'm loving it.
I don't know. We'll see. I'll ask you that question at the end of it if I'm doing great. I don't know. We just met 10 minutes ago. I don't know. Yeah. Well, Brian, what I like to start with everyone when we get on the pod is just a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, how you got into it, and then we'll get into the actual meat and potatoes of the conversation. But start us off with a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks. So I have probably a very different background than a lot of people you have on here. I'm actually a forester, like a forester for the military. When I was a kid, I loved working out and I loved being outside, and I actually had no idea that strength conditioning was a thing besides just what you did. And so I went into forestry and have a 4-year degree in forest management. But even when I was in school and graduated and working in forestry, strength conditioning has always been there. I always trained. And even when I got a job as a forester, I ended up getting my certification to become a personal trainer and worked a lot of different gyms, training people. And then after a little while, I just realized, I wanted more than just the entry level. I needed to not only know the reps and sets, I needed to understand the why behind it. And so in the evenings, I went back to school, got my master's in exercise science. And while I was working on that, I was talking with Ryan Nyquist, who became the head coach for the U.S. BMX freestyle team. And so I'm talking to him about what I'm learning and what is he doing. And he said, look, I got this guy, Marcus Christopher. He's working out in his basement. Could you help him? And I said, sure, absolutely. I'd love to. And so I start programming for Marcus, working with him. He starts doing better. And through word of mouth and Ryan's help, I started getting more athletes, more BMX freestyle, and more until eventually we have enough people going that he said, hey, do you just want to travel with us? And so I started traveling the world with the BMX freestyle team. Being right there, going to all these competitions, including up and into the 2024 Paris Olympics, lived in the village and everything with them. And then even before the Olympics, though, within about a year or so of traveling, I was kind of realizing that strength conditioning, while it's really important, it wasn't having that quite big effect we thought it would. I noticed, people that I saw, athletes doing these like vigorous warm-ups and clearly worked out a lot, weren't placing as high as other athletes that did not have such a structure. And then so with Ryan's encouragement, I really started to push more into sports science and trying to understand what's actually moving the needle in this sport, and I think that's one thing as strength conditioning people, we really come at it with this, like, what's this problem? Strength, answer, what is this? Strength. And it's like, sometimes it is important. I could argue all day that a healthy, strong, fit athlete's going to perform better than some other version of themselves that's not healthy. But, really, when you work with a high-level team and athletes, your job is for them to win, not for them to be the strongest. And so we really try to get deeper into that. We had a great time at the Olympics, had a great showing, but not quite the performance we were hoping for. So afterwards, new coach, new everything. I ended up stepping away, which allowed me actually more time to get not only deeper into the sports science, but start to kind of push out into other what's called lifestyle sports. And that's sports that people get into kind of just more for enjoyment. So you think BMX freestyle, of course, skateboarding, surfing. I've talked with speed climbers. Those guys are crazy. Free ski, all sorts of stuff. So I really now started to kind of, like I said, trying to bring a more analytical approach to how do we train for this? How do we, with such a diverse sport that they do, the courses change, everything's changing. How do you tell what's actually making an improvement? And that's kind of where I am now, working with my athletes still train a lot of them, and then just kind of learning what I can and putting it out there for people.
You glossed. I'm gonna touch on that story 1 minute here. We're gonna get into sports science. Is like you just happened to cross paths with Ryan Nyquist? Like he was like, does he live near you? Like where did you meet? How did you cross paths with him?
Yeah. So you remember how I said I was like this little personal trainer at this tiny gym? That tiny gym was owned by Allie Nyquist, his wife. And so I'm seeing him at the gym. Yeah, I've heard it said before, and I agree with this, that a lot of success comes from hard work, luck, and location. And I was like, I put in that work, I worked, but hey, I just happened to be at this gym where Ryan is. He just happens to get chosen to be the head coach, and to where it was kind of this perfect storm of everything came together. And so, he was there. And at the time, it was funny when I was first started, people at the gym were like, Ryan's a big deal. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I am glad to hear that about him. And then later they're like, no, he's in video games. He was, lived with Tony Hawk. He's, kind of founded this dude, was instrumental in the Do Tour. And I was like, oh shit. And then really got deeper. And then also the same thing, kind of really was like cutting my teeth in what is BMX. He got me my first bike. I had one of his old bikes he got me. The first time I was riding BMX was on the 2020 Olympic course in Tokyo. We were there getting ready for a competition, and he was like, hop on my bike and go ride around a little bit. And so, first time riding a bike, his bike on the 2020 Olympic course.
That's wild. You mentioned I just happened to be talking to Ryan. I'm like, no. We're coming back. You don't just happen to talk. But it may, I like how you said that, like luck, location,
hard work.
Hard work. Like that all makes sense now. But I wasn't gonna let you, Brian. I wasn't gonna let you get off just being like, we talked about. People are gonna be listening to be like, how the hell do you? And if you don't know who Ryan Nyquist is, I don't want to ruin the Google search for you. Brian just alluded like he's literally in video games, like he's boys with Tony Hawk, like he's like the bike version of Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Right. Like Tony Hawk is the skateboard version of Ryan Nyquist in a way. Like they're from the same era as someone who grew up watching the X Games.
Yeah. He is. And he still rides in his back yard. He bought a pretty good sized piece of land and built a really large course back there. And still can do it. Even to this day, he was out, like when we were working with the team, they'd all come down and, he's out there showing tricks and laying down runs, and he's still got it.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, one thing I want to kind of start here. This was one of the talking points that I think you actually had suggested, and I think is a really good launch point for the conversation, is the idea of creating buy-in for athletes that are especially like a very skilled sport, right? Like you're saying, like, and I think you maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of like said, like your job is to help them win, not necessarily become these big behemoth strength monsters, right? And that's something that we talk about at Parisi, right? Like speed is a skill, strength is a skill. At some point they intersect, and at some point one can not necessarily help the other. And it's our job to make someone faster, improve performance, but it doesn't necessarily equate to putting the ball in the net, ball through the hoop, whatever it might be. How have you navigated buy-in on the skill side and the strength side, and maybe just share some stories about how you were able to really start to move the needle with these guys?
So before we get into that, I want to say that a lot of the people listening to this probably might not have a BMX freestyle athlete they're working with. So while I reference BMX freestyle, I want everyone to know, think alternative athlete. Anyone else, because I guarantee they're going to have someone that does something else that doesn't have that structured background. So, I just keep that in mind, everything we talk about. So buy-in is a little tricky with, BMX and with probably any lifestyle sport, because it is its own independent like sport. Like everyone's, doing it for themselves, but also its history and background. It did not come from a structured background. You think of a lot of the sports we have now where, soccer, for example, to where like you have to play as a team. Your team has to have a coach. Like there's structure built into it. Whereas BMX started with kids watching motocross and being like, hey, let's try it on our bike, and then just doing it. And a lot of the best people you'll see, are actually not in the parks. They're doing rail rides behind the dumpster at Walmart on a loading dock, because that's just how they are. So, trying to get them to be like, hey, I'm going to help you do strength and conditioning, get better. You're not going to get there. It was funny because getting ready for the Olympics, I thought that was going to happen. And we just didn't get the buy-in that I originally thought. I have much more buy-in now. Two ways that that I think can help people get better buy-in. One is just time. They need to know you're there. And even after the contract ended, they didn't have any like handoff plan for the athletes. And so I said, man, look, what I'm doing at this point, I can figure this out on Google Sheets. I'll just do it. And since, as I said, I'm a forester, I actually have a job that pays all my bills. I was like, yeah, I'll program for a while. That's been over a year ago, and I still program for them. And because of that, they now really do, come to me with problems, and they talk to me about stuff, and I'm getting way more commitment with them because it's just been time, I think a little bit more time, and they start to open up. They realize I'm not just, another face passing through. And so that helps. Unfortunately, with BMX freestyle and probably other lifestyle sports, another way you're going to get buy-in is injury. There's just no way around it. And this isn't like, some long-term systemic injury of my elbows going bad. It's you missed the jump and hit the cement from 20 feet up in the air. You are injured. Marcus Christopher, who I mentioned at the beginning, he was getting ready for one of the big competitions coming up and missed a jump and fractured 3 vertebrae. And he's posted about it on his Instagram, so we're not telling anyone any medical history here. It's out there. But yeah, he fractured 3 of them. He's okay. He's up and moving, and I talk to him all the time. But, the buy-in when he was doing well to get better was kind of so-so. The buy-in when he's hurt and he wants to get back on that bike is extremely there. He checks in with me a lot. He tells me what the doctor says he can do, what he can't do. I write him programs. I'm like, tell me exactly how your back feels when you do this. He's like, this one stings a little when I twist this way. We're now getting much more detailed into it because they love riding. That is, it's a high impact sport. The pay is just okay. And so they're really in it because just of the love of it. And he wants to get back on that bike. And so I'm doing everything I can to help him get there.
Do you, and this is a quick tangent, and we talked about this idea a little bit before we clicked record. Do you think that having like a career before strength conditioning helped you with the communication side? Because I feel like in strength conditioning, there's communication, but a lot of times it's like headbutting between the strength conditioning staff and a head coach, or maybe you're working in a collegiate setting and like you have a primary sport on campus, hockey, soccer, basketball, whatever, football.
Yeah.
And then you might be the strength coach for the tennis team, a smaller team on campus, and you're just catching ricochets from the communication errors. I'm just curious if you felt like maybe you had to develop communication, or just having a career outside of the ego that can be in strength conditioning that helped you as you transitioned into strength conditioning.
Yeah, I think, communication would have been a huge one. Unfortunately, my background was in forestry, where we're not known a lot for communication. Many times I went like a week without seeing another human. So my communication skills were already...
I'm actually super interested in that, and we'll get to that at the very end.
Yeah, just living out in the woods doing it.
Where you're in North Carolina, you got some serious woods out there.
Oh yeah, we do. Well, I work on the military base as well. So it's like woods with artillery flying overhead. It's a little bit of everything. But my communication skills were already struggling. That is one thing that I wish if I could go back in time. I read every crazy strength conditioning book, just to brag about how I got through this 5-inch book. And really, I should have read more on communication, because ultimately, like you said, these guys don't care. They don't care how much you know. They want to know, how are they going to get better, and how can you explain it in a more simple way? Because, I feel horrible. One of the athletes that was on the team that I didn't directly work with, was Justin Dowell. He's still on the team. He's a very interesting guy, but he always gave me crap. And he was like, there's nothing in here, for BMX doesn't need strength conditioning. We've never used it, never needed it. And in a way, he was right in the fact that it hasn't had a traditional background. However, as I said, injuries are going to happen. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt that a healthy individual is going to heal faster and be back up and moving faster than someone that is not. We know that even if you want to say there's nothing here, if we strap a heart rate monitor on you, we're going to see bigger readings when you're running. And my inability to kind of communicate to him, I think, it could have been better. And I wish I had, looking back now. And so that is one thing I don't play around about now. I do. I'm taking some little basic courses on writing, because same thing, almost everything's remote now, and I'm got to write it to people. So like, how can I write this out? How can I communicate? Not only like, I can spout out facts and figures, but how can you work it into a story that they understand and then relate to them, so that they really, just don't say, okay, well, I guess 3 sets of 5 is what I'm supposed to do. It's like, here's why we're doing this and how it's going to help you, and the problem you're currently facing, and how this modality is going to help you get over that problem and get to that next level. And I think if I had done a little bit more storytelling, I think too, a problem, when you work with sports, is that with sports, you tend to think more of this mentality of, you want to get to a place, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do to get there. That's not on me to try to convince you. You want to get to a place, and I'm telling you what you have to do. And in reality, that might seem like the case, but that's not. They don't have to do anything. And by being a little bit softer of saying, you want to get here, and here's the path we can take. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more maybe about periodization and all that stuff. We can get into that, but just being a little bit more, giving with them and understanding where they're coming from, and kind of putting it a little bit more relatable, gets a lot more buy-in. And there's been other studies about, and I've just kind of heard this and kind of felt it, that someone that truly believes in a crappy program is going to get a lot more out of it than someone that doesn't believe in a good program. And so, make them believe first. Everything else can come later.
Yeah. I think, I say unfortunately, but I don't know if that's the right word. I just feel like communication for everyone I think of us as like an intimate service provider, like on the strength conditioning, like you're working with someone's body, helping them on a performance side, like on a sport or an activity that means so much to them. It's a very intimate process, what we do. I feel like communication is always the growing pains for all of us, whether it be on an individual setting, from a team setting, working with a staff, a strength conditioning staff, to a coaching staff, whatever it may be. I appreciate you sharing that, because that's something that I think a lot of people just need to know. Like, we all go through it. Like, they're hearing like the end product of Brian Roy right now, right? But like years ago, it wasn't always like that. And it's, I feel like every time I assess, like beginning of January, I assess the year before, I think the number one or number two thing that I think of every year is some level of communication, how you can better prep people on an onboard, how you can better hand off people between seasons, how you can better prepare people for changes in programming because of a change in their seasons. And that's, it's just, I think we all go through it, man. We all go through it.
And to something to add to that communication is, you got to remember, like, you might see something they're doing wrong, and you want to correct it in some way or another. Maybe it's the program, maybe it's literally a physical movement. Well, you have to first kind of think about what that is, then convert that thought into words, say those words. They have to hear those words, then decrypt what you said, and then do it. And I mean, from doing personal training, and I did small group too, that there's times where you say something and you look around, you're like, is that what y'all got from what I just said? Did you? Is that? I'm like, someone say it back to me so I can hear it, because this is what I thought I said, and y'all are all doing something different. So yeah, so it's not only like the communication of it, but it's like literally the communication of how do you take someone like you that's got like, decades of experience, and it's almost like having someone that was like a jet propulsion teach someone how to make a fire with sticks. And it's like, too much. You need to somehow, how do we break this down and make it much more simple to where we can get across to them?
Yeah, I think that might be, that's human to human. I don't know. Some of it I feel like is just unavoidable too. Like, you catch someone that they're like lack of sleep or their mind is distracted. It doesn't matter you might not matter what you do. It's just, you just got to get through the session and get on to the next one, because it is just, you can't do anything at that point. You got to ultimate dumb it down. And you had mentioned like talking about periodization. I do want to get into that. So I don't have a clean segue
that's okay.
into it, but talking about periodization, because it's super interesting, and I'm going to go very surface level. Please get as granular or as specific as you want. Like, because you're talking about training people on an Olympic schedule largely, right? And then like world tour, like there's different events, but then who knows what these people are doing like on individual levels, or if they have like individual sponsorships that maybe they need to have some level of physical preparation for. Can you talk a little bit about just what went into programming for these guys? Like you're saying, like it's a lifestyle sport, like it's just it's not the same, right? We talked like team training, and then there's lifestyle sports and individualized sports. How are you approaching it? How did you approach it?
So it was tricky. Because like I said, I study, I have my CSCS, I studied the books, and, I think a lot of that stuff is based on an outdated model of, you have this off season and then a preseason and an in season and postseason. And what you're going to find, with my athletes, and even now working with, other people, kids, there is no more off season. That is a thing of the past, with travel sports and stuff. And I guarantee a lot of the people, listen to this that are with the Parisi system, like they have a lot of kids, and that whole like off season, this is what we're going to do. That's gone. And I tried that periodization of an off season, because I'm like, oh, we got the textbook. Here's what we do. Let's follow this system. And that's the idea. You have a system and you follow it. And oh my God, it went horrible. Just absolutely brutal, because they said I have a competition. The next major competition was in 3 months. Fantastic. I can do this much during a hypertrophy block, knowing they're going to be sore, but we're going to get ready. And then, we're going to taper off. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Absolute failure. And the reason it failed is because kind of what you mentioned is that they have this major competition, but for sponsors, they might have shows in between. Depending on how much they get paid, they might have to do demo shows for people, for schools sometimes. They have to ride every day. They had one time, one of my guys just had these crazy heart rate readings. And I said, what is going on? He's like, oh, some of the boys from such and such drove down here. And so we've just been going all out, to where a good talk I had with Bryce fairly early on, Bryce Tryon, great BMX rider. He's like, I've always got to be able to ride. He's like, maybe I can't lift, but I always have to ride. I cannot be sore. And so, with that in mind, I want people to remember that periodization is just an organized structure for progressive overload. That's all it is. At the very principle, all periodization models you look at, I don't care if it's linear, block, wave, step, conjugate, it's all just a matter of how are we going to slowly structure progressive overload. And progressive overload at its core is just doing a little bit more with enough space in between to where you can recover, yet still close enough that you can build on the progress you made. And that is everything. And so if we just kind of keep that in mind, it really opens it up that you have way more freedom now. And with that periodization, that is something that was kind of scary and kind of freeing at the same time with BMX, is that, you could, if you were into, speed training, you have a very good system. Y'all have a system. You could have someone come up, a kid that doesn't know anything, and wants to, he's improving his sprint time. you have a way of looking at it, figuring it out, knowing, what you need to work on, what his deficiencies, looking at his schedule, and creating a system to come up, or, creating a pathway forward. BMX, there's absolutely nothing. I mean, there is nothing out there. There was, at the time when I started, like 15 papers total, and they were just kind of like off to the side, anecdotal, like grip strength stuff. Like, there was nothing. And I mean, I looked around. It's like there's with nothing, it's freeing to do whatever you want. So we tried. I explained people different programming. We try it. There's many times that people say, "Oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I would love to do that." And within like 3 weeks, they had quit or done something different or changed it to the point that I said, "No, programming now is doing a little bit more." And to get really more like specific, because if people are working with anyone in lifestyle sports, what I found best after a lot of experience is an A-B program, an A and B. That way, if many times they said they wanted to do 3 days, they barely did 3. But if they wanted to do 3, it's like, great, just do the opposite, whatever you did last time. I have a high day. The high day is, think higher volume, something that's going to be more intense, going to be a little bit more to recover from. And a low day is going to be higher intensity, less volume, easier. It's going to be more central nervous system, but it's not going to be physically burned. And so I just tell them, hey, by the end of the week, I'd like you to get 2 days in. I do not care when. That is 100% up to you. You have this flexibility looking at your schedule. Ideally, I'd like a day in between. If not, whatever, just try. And if you can't only get 1 day, you only get 1 day. And I count that as, that's their workout, that's their progress. And just giving them sort of these like kind of general guides, it helped to have it in more of a PDF format actually, or a playlist style. Some of the apps now are doing a playlist style, because originally we gotten, it really ended up hurting me to where a lot of the original apps, you'd put in like Monday, do this, Tuesday, do that. And they'd be like, yeah, Monday, it was this heavy high day, but my boy showed up and we all rode for 4 hours and I can't do it. And they were like, so I didn't know what to do. So I just quit the whole thing. And I was like, oh, great. So it was just 2 days. Pick a day. I don't care. If it's going to be raining these 3 days, do them then. So giving them that flexibility, but having something there that they can do. And just knowing that each time we're going to build. And something else that I wish I could go back and talk to myself about is this concept of optimal, boy, when they told me, when they had their final program, or when they had their big competition coming up, and it was in 3 months, and I had my, we're starting here and I have 3 months. Well, I wrote this program. Oh, I mean, beautiful. Would have brought a tear to your eye. This thing's so gorgeous. And within 2 weeks, it was done. I mean, they were, like I said, they had done something different. And, the problem with a lot of our periodization is we're taught is day 1 builds on, or, day 2 builds on day 1, and day 3 builds on day 2, and so forth. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, you're going to be way off from where we are. Don't think that. Don't, get that out of your head. What you need to start thinking is where they are compared to the version of them doing nothing, because most of them, that is their option. So, there's days where they, right before the Olympics, pretty sure Marcus was like, we're going 4-wheeling, and just was like, I'm not doing it. I'm going 4-wheeling. And, for him, it was probably a way to relax, have fun. And that's great. But there was a time where I would have been pretty bent out of shape of like, hey, this program, you're supposed to be peaking and all this. And now I'm like, hey, you know what? Ultimately, if we look over time, you're improving a little bit, and it was more than what you had done before. And that's my periodization now, of just really getting hands off. And it's funny because working with the military, I do talk a lot to people that work with tactical athletes, and it's the same thing, to where you have these like beautiful programs you write, and then nope, they've all of a sudden they've got to go, do something somewhere else, and it's all blown out of the water. And so by being a little bit more fluid, a little bit more relaxed with it, and just saying, as long as in the grand scheme, we're doing a little bit more, that's my periodization.
Yeah, I love the way, I could not agree more to everything you just said. I agree with everything. and I don't want two things you said really stuck out. I don't want them to get overshadowed. The first was you're comparing the progressed version to the version of them that does nothing, because largely and this is my own experience, right? You see with high skill sports, which BMX freestyle, that's incredibly high skill sport. They got to where they're at without strength conditioning. Like I see with basketball players, like they got to where they're at because they're 6'8" and they can put the ball through the rim and shoot. And that largely doesn't necessarily require the utmost amount of strength. Whereas like when you think of something like football, like an offensive lineman, you have to be pretty strong to push another 350-pound human being backwards. So where it's really almost, and the second thing to kind of not gloss over that, but the second thing is how you said like how you had to manage like fatigue, I guess. You didn't say it like exactly like that, but how you almost have to like combat, like these guys have to be able to perform every day. And like, that's their livelihood.
Yeah.
So if you give them a program that leaves them debilitated or with any sort of like unusual body feelings, I feel like athletes are probably a little more hypersensitive to what their body's experiencing. Even if we tell them, no, it's super normal. Hey, your glutes are going to be sore, your hips are going to be sore. And they're like, listen, I can't sit on the seat right.
Yeah.
Like I can't walk around my house right. Like this is concerning to me. You're going to be fine in 24 hours. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like you talk about like buying and different things. Like I think for a lot of athletes, it is crazy how you find yourself from what the textbook says to what you actually are managing. The disconnect is night and day. Like in theory, that's what textbook learning is theory. And then when you actually get into the practical application, it's like preference, if that makes sense. Like you're really programming based off of the athlete's preferred sensations with programming or with exercise or fitness, strength conditioning, whatever word you want to use. I really like that, how you describe that, obviously in like the larger sense too, but like strength coaches listening to this, like you're not doing it wrong, guys and gals. Like you're not, you know, what matters is what matters to your clients and your teams and the coaches and whatnot. And that's, I just think that's really good, like headspace from you to recognize like what it really means and then what it really looks like. Cause those are very different from what people probably assume.
Yeah. Kind of building on that, I'm a really big fan of Dan John, and I've met with him and talked with him before. He's a really nice guy. And a couple things that he said that's really guided me. One is just kind of this observation he had that, BMX is what he calls a fuzzy sport. So like I said at the beginning, strength and conditioning, obviously someone that's fit is going to perform better than someone that's not, but it's not this 1-to-1, an example, something else would be like football. If you got someone playing football, squatting 50 more pounds, they're literally going to have a better output. Like you can see that guy pushing people around the field and be like, oh, I made him squat more, or he's much stronger, therefore X is happening. Whereas when I had a little bit of a break with Marcus, as far as he had a break in training, we pushed up squats, like his squat, we added some, a good amount of weight. We didn't see anything major happen, to where it's not quite this like distinct carryover. And as I said, I know someone that's fitter is going to be better, but it's not this 1-to-1. So in that case, I want them getting better, but it's not like this dialed in, they have to be improving by X amount. The other thing too, is that I got from Dan John that I live by now with them is, generally speaking, I'd rather have them walk out of the gym saying, I could have done a little more, than saying too much. Because like I said, if they go to do a jump and their quads are just a little too much, we went a little too heavy on something and they can't hit that jump, that's a real problem. I mean, because also they're anticipating being able to ask their body for this power at the right time. I mean, it's not just as simple as jump. Like they have to time this perfectly, going up this ramp, hitting that lip and coming off of it and having enough speed and power to be able to do their move and then land properly again. And so if they're going up and they're like, all right, I need this power, and their body's your legs hurt, I can't give it to you, they're already committed. They're going up the ramp. This is happening. They're catching airtime whether they are going to land it or not. So I can't afford to have it go over. You can kind of play around a little bit more with them. And as far as figuring out what muscles don't. So for example, we really got bigger into hinges, going heavier on hinging motions, because if their glutes maybe went a little overboard on some sort of, like, I really like Romanian deadlifts. But let's say we went overboard on that, or kettlebell swings, we were getting that. They could ride, and if their butt was a little sore, but if their quads were cooked, that was a no, we couldn't do that. So kind of picking and choosing which ones I was going to be a little bit more conservative and which ones we could really ramp it up with.
Yeah. And I always giggle on, I will keep my own thoughts on like collegiate strength conditioning and like high level team, like the pro level. I don't know if that's a pro level, but like, I feel like Division I strength conditioning, sometimes it makes me giggle because they number chase a lot. Because their job requires, it's not no fault of their own, but largely their success is, I got the team this much stronger and these lifts. And I think we as an industry forget that with performance, a lot of things are performance, right? Like tissue readiness is performance, tissue durability is performance, tissue hypertrophy can be for performance. There's so many different things you can do that, it might not necessarily be the raw output, right? Like it doesn't necessarily mean like you're putting more muscle mass on a person. You increase their size of their whatever muscle. It can just mean that when they put their foot on the pedal and push, they know it's going well, right? It's always interesting. I work with a couple different like distant, like ultra runners and high level, like high distance endurance based athletes. And I always tell them, like, you might not necessarily feel the workout. It's okay. It's okay if you don't feel the workout. You shouldn't, because if you're going to go on a 3-hour run in the woods, I don't want you to take every step and think about how sore your quads are or your calves are. I want you to just trust the muscle and know that what you're doing in the weight room is just kindness. Hey, we're asking a lot of you. Right? Like, hey, BMX athlete, you're about to launch yourself 20 feet in the air. You might land, you might not, but when you come down, you better be able to absorb force. We're just trying to be kind to the body. That's all. Just give it a little bit of love so it can handle that stress a little bit better. And you might not necessarily, because I think, be here, Jim, and you're like, you see the stuff, right? These guys probably see the stuff. They're like, oh, I don't want to turn into an Under Armour ad or the opposite. They're like, I'm going to a yoga class. Like, what do you mean mobility? Like they don't necessarily know. So it's I just always try to preach whenever we even, but like not preach, but for Parisi or certification, I tell people, like, you might not feel speed training. If you run 5 sprints as fast as you can, you might feel it, you might not, but it's okay, because we're just patterning the body. You're training there's so many different things with the body that it's not just this raw hypertrophy type effect anymore. Like, it's crazy to me how many strength coaches still like numbers chase.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is. Yeah, you have a good point that, at a college level, I think you're probably kind of pushed to be like, show me what you've got. It was funny because right after the Olympics, I mean, like within a day or two, it says beforehand, Jamie Staff, who was over all of BMX at the time, I saw him, in the village, and he was like, hey, what is your plan for coming up? And I was like, yeah, no, I've thought about this. I've got a great plan. And he's like, what's that? I was like, consistency. And he's like, okay, but like, are you going to work on power? Are you going to work on it? I was like, we are going to work on consistency. And he was like, well, what are you going to show? I'm like, if they check in with me 5 days a week just to tell me how they're doing, I'm like, that is progress. That is what we're going for. It's not always about, like you said, who can squat more, because I saw some athletes that were, they were like doing a full-on workout as their warm-up, and they just weren't performing as well. And I'm like, having them check in, being consistent and intentional with their movement. All right, that's a win. That's what I'm going for right now.
Do you now, well, as we say all that, in your experience, did you find like any one thing like did move the needle? I know we talked to like sports science, you like dove into like what could like and was moving the needle. Did you ever like find like what really you thought like really helped these guys?
Yeah, that's something I've thought a lot about. I'd say I struggle with that from the aspect that, as I said, my concept of periodization and everything now is a little bit more. So the training's so sporadic, it's kind of hard to tell what it was. Additionally, we have this other issue, which is why I got into moving into that sports science, was that each time your course changes.
Yeah.
So, you can't even look at someone and be like, what is your final score? Let's see their scores going up. It's like, no, that doesn't matter because, this, God, was it the last competition? Maybe they had this 7-foot spine in the middle of it. I mean, which is crazy for BMX. It's a ramp where it just goes really, think about this really steep ramp, and it's got like a 4-inch lip and then comes back down. So they got to go up, like almost straight up in the air and do something and then land it right there. It's just a big spine. Well, some people love spine. Justin Dow loves spine. He does well at spine competitions. So, yeah, he did great. People that don't do a lot of spine, they did not do as well. So it's hard to say, oh, we've been training for 3 months doing this, and then, oh, you bombed out of this competition. It's like, yeah, if they put a huge, like astronomically large spine in the middle, of course I bombed out. I don't do that. Where some of them, might have, there's one where it's just like had 2 large boxes right in the middle. That was it. It's just these 2 boxes. And I was like, yeah, if you love yourself a box and you're good at it, you would have crushed. So I can't use total points, as the metric. I will say if I really, so that was going into like, it's kind of hard to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
I had to go more on a subjective feedback of just talking with people. And that, on a minor quick tangent, that is one benefit of staying in a space and working with more and more athletes in that area, is that you're able to see patterns a lot faster. And so by working with more athletes, they really felt that their aerobic and anaerobic conditioning had a much bigger effect than what any of us had anticipated. I put a lot more zone 2 in there. I'm a huge fan of Joel Jamieson, his work.
Yeah.
And so we had these kind of just off bike conditioning days of walking. I showed them on the heart rate monitors. This is what a zone 2 is. This is what I want. Here's a talk test you can do if you don't have your heart rate monitor. So that's zone 2. And then a lot more like VO2 max training, the Norwegian 4x4, kind of really getting up there, getting on their bikes, just really pushing that up. That had a huge effect. If I had to, take an educated guess why, it's because their runs, I mean, for anyone that's not familiar, it's a 60-second run by yourself on this course, all out, everything you got. And of course, towards the end, you really need to start with a pretty big banger, like to kind of set the course. Then you can kind of lay down kind of your meat and potatoes of what you're good at, and then you better end with another big banger. And by that end, even though it seems like 60 seconds is short, it's not when you're out on these bikes. And by having that aerobic capacity, there are studies out there saying, just about how your fine motor skills with higher aerobic capacity, that they stay longer. And that is it. Like you said, the spine, for example, let's say you're doing this big trick. You're doing a triple tail whip. You're trying to look down at the ramp. You've got all these little moving pieces, and just being that fact that you've got a little bit more gas in the tank, you're a little bit more relaxed because your heart rate's been up higher for longer before, you're able to stick that a little bit better. And so, I felt like that one, out of everything we did, just that general pushing that anaerobic up, and, they're trying to increase their VO2 max. We never really got into testing like that. So it's, once again, this is more subjective on what we were doing with training and what they gave me feedback. It would have been really nice to have some sort of VO2 max test before and after. And how did you do?
That's a tough test to just strap people up and go do. It's not readily available.
It is. Well, it's funny because it's not, but we could talk for days, I'm sure, but we don't even have time to get into this. But how much tech is out there? I mean, they now have VO2 masks you can wear just at home, and you can have them hop on any sort of calibrated bike with just a mask, and they can just knock out a VO2 max test at home with the mask on. And that was one thing we had talked about doing, was say, hey, we should invest in one of these, show them how to do, their cycle bikes, and then just, instead of needing everyone to fly out to one testing place, but like, no, I'll just send it to you. You know how to do it. You send it back to me, and I can get your readings. And yeah, there's quite a few masks now that are designed for people just to wear at home and go at it.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it's really cool what you can do.
I'll say hand up. I didn't know that existed. I assumed you'd have to get them all at one test site, right? It's like same with like blood lactates. Like we're doing finger pricks at the side of the track. I'm like, not everyone wants to do that.
Yes.
I know I was an athlete. If you like, there's blood and I'm lightheaded from running this hard, I'm not doing that. That would end up putting me on the ground. I don't want to do that. That's super cool. I appreciate you going into the detail on that, Brian, because that's something that I think coaches listening to this, like we sometimes, I'll say we, because I'm part of the industry too, like we kind of forget like the basics, right? Like, like if you can just improve aerobic, anaerobic capacity, output in those two categories of cardiovascular training, like most athletes will benefit from that. Right? Like if push comes to shove, if you had to pick qualities, like you're saying, like that makes so much sense. And I feel like guys on bikes, right? Like you can, like you can get some buy-in on that, like that. They'll see that, they'll feel that. They're not necessarily having, and I don't know if you had this issue, and I'd be curious to hear your experience with it. Like when you have athletes or these guys that spend so much time on one modality, right? They're on a bike all the time. Is it hard to get them to get off the bike or to do something different? If you're like, hey, let's go do a zone 2 run. And they're like, I can just ride a bike. Like, why would I run? You know, like, did you ever find like getting them in different modalities was a challenge?
It has been, just because that's what the bike is what they know and it's what they're used to. And then also it's hard because of where they all are. Like I said, scattered all over. Like I can tell you right now, I love a sled. I mean, you give me a sled, a TRX strap, and some dumbbells, and if I was on a deserted island, that's what I'd take with me. And so I was like, you guys should do sled. And Mark is like, I'm in Northern Ohio. It's snow. I can't go push a sled. So he is kind of trapped on what he has available, which is, an Airdyne bike and a spin bike. And so I do feel like, I'm like, man, we just kind of keep hammering home these same movements. I like if I had, all the space in the world, I would prefer if they'd have something like a rower in there, or even I really like a ski erg, so that way you're kind of standing up, you're a little off the bike and you're doing this, if you've ever used one, it's a great one. Just breaking up that modality, especially too, I feel when it comes to your heart, and I think Joel Jameson said this, is that, your heart just knows the sensation to pump more. It does not know, whether you're, doing a ski or you're cross-country skiing or rowing or any of that, it just knows more. There is, I think, a fair bit of study showing that, you do tend to, a lot of that conditioning can be specific to the modality that you are using. However, they're already on a bike. Most of them practice 3 hours a day. So I'm like, they're already hitting that. So by getting them off the bike and then doing something else, a skier or a rower or anything else, I think it'd be good for them, and it would still help their conditioning, and it just get them like out of this kind of hunched over shape. I mean, that's one of the biggest things we deal with. You kind of touched on it earlier, and I'll kind of hit on it a little bit here, and that is that we, you have different types of training, and we can either train to make you stronger and better, or we can train to remove your injuries and limitations, which are going to allow you to do your training more. And so I think that was another one kind of going, let's tie it back to buy-in, that I could have done better. And I think we should have leaned heavier into that of, if I could go back right now, and I could see, Justin, we were walking through Tokyo at this monument because we had some days off before the competition because you got to fly out there ahead of time. And he was like, oh, this isn't going to do it. I could have stepped back in time and said, hey, if you rode 3 hours today, why didn't you ride 4? Why? Tell me why. And you say, well, this hurt, or I was that tired. Great. We're going to take care of that. Physically, I mean, we tend to think strength and conditioning coaches, it's always just more. Really, our job is to improve somebody through the body. That's it. And so how can we help them through the body? Sometimes it's as simple as, might be yoga. It might be more recovery. It might be more just leaning heavier into the conditioning of saying, you didn't ride for that long. It's funny because I talked also too with skateboarding, because at the Olympics, they're actually a lot of the Olympic qualifiers, they're right there next to us. And so same thing. It's like, no, I'm not, we don't need that. And then they're getting off their board and using like a massage gun all over their knee. And they're like, oh, they're killing me on these jumps. I'm like, guys, you realize that knee problems is a very common thing with sports. I'm like, we can easily do some workouts that's not, strength, not traditional strength training, quote unquote here, but it's going to help you with your knees. And if your knees feel better, you're going to ride more. And if you're riding more, you're going to get better. So, let's think about it this way of eliminating this pain or this point, this preventing you from doing more training. And then that's it. As a coach, I'm going to help get rid of that so you can do more of what you love. I mean, who could argue with helping someone do more of what they love?
Right. And that goes back to buy-in.
Yeah.
If they know that's your key takeaway, I don't know what athlete wouldn't buy into that, right? Like they're like, yeah, great, cool. Half the time they're probably just thinking you're there to make them puke.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think too, if you didn't know it and you're looking at strength and conditioning, you're going to instantly, especially in America, go straight to like football coach thing, think of that traditional gym,
For sure.
The squat and get up and, one more and all that. And they're like, dude, that's not me. And I'm like, that's not really me either. I mean, so yeah, just focusing more on what can help them, just get out there and do it more.
I'm loving all the insights that you're bringing. And I do have one more question, because one thing we haven't really brought this up, but like, it sounds like all these guys, like how often were you training everyone in one spot? Because it sounds like everything was pretty remote based. Were you ever in the same spot with these guys?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So, that was a big challenge. No, we really weren't all together. We would come together for competitions, but as you could imagine, like I'm meeting them many times. I was finally getting face to face with everyone at LAX before we got on the flight to go to Shanghai, and so that is not the time to start being like, hey guys, let's talk about our workout today. Like, no, I'm already in the psyched up mode about getting ready. So yeah, they were remote. That was something that was kind of fun, kind of unique that I loved about it is, as I said, I'm here in Eastern North Carolina, right? A tiny town. I mean, I think we just put a new stoplight. We might have 7 now, 7 at most. Like So it's a little place. And so it was very unique that I got to work with these, world famous athletes in this tiny place. But like I said, they're all over. I wish we had leaned a little bit more heavy into more remote training technology. A great one, an example, a company I have no affiliation with whatsoever, like Metric VBT, I think it's a barbell velocity tracking one that you can use on your phone, because a lot of this app-based stuff, like people might say, oh, well, it's pretty accurate. I'm like, it's accurate enough for what we're doing. If you're, training to be an Olympic weightlifter, probably not good enough. But if I'm training someone to get better, it's more than accurate.
Yeah, it moves the needle, for sure.
Yeah. So I wish, there's a lot more working remotely with them. And even let's say we weren't remote, they still, their schedules are all over the place. Right before the Olympics, they had built a new training facility, Core Park. It's out in Park City, Utah. And that kind of also helped encourage me to get more into sports science and everything. Because it's like, well, if you're building a training facility in Utah, it would make sense that you'd want to do strength and conditioning to Utah. And I am not moving to Utah. No offense for all you Utah listeners. It's just, I've got a good life right here at the beach and I'm not giving it up. So, so and it's funny because even after they built it, I think that's kind of what they were thinking. And honestly, Hannah Roberts, who worked out with me here, she trained with me here. She was, I think, the only one that moved to Utah. And so up until after the Olympics, her and Ryan Nikos would come work out in my garage with me. I mean, doing lifting, doing training. And so I got to see her in person, but everyone else was just remote. I think that's fairly common. I know quite a few coaches at Red Bull and in LA, and that's kind of the same thing, to where they're like, we'll have people fly in, we'll do testing, we'll talk about stuff, and we send them home with the program. And so with those types of sports, they're just a central location is not how they work. And so, yeah, there's a lot more distance, and that going back to our talking about communication, it's a lot more important when I can't see them. And you know, you're another thing to kind of tie this back, what exercises. Dude, I love a good drop catch. I mean, if you look at their landing, you know, these handlebars are just being, you know, shoved up towards them and their chest are coming down. I'm like, I drop catch. That makes perfect sense. Like, I'm not going to have a guy in his basement by himself dropping a barbell at his face to catch it because it's sport specific. You know, yeah, I think it's great. I'm not there. We're not going to do it, you know? So yeah. I think if we were in person, maybe we could have made some more progress. I definitely, it's funny because we do well, even though countries, China and Australia, they have very rigorous programs. Their athletes have to be near their facility. They have to train a certain amount. Their female rider, she won gold at the Olympics. So it's having a big benefit there of being, you know, at one place and seeing everyone. But for us, that's just not the case.
Yeah. So how did that work for like your initial testing or assessments or running a battery of tests? I know that was one of the talking points we wanted to get to, but I'm like, and you got me thinking about like with the VO2 max mass, you could like send them out, but everything, if I'm assuming like the testing had to have been done remote too, right?
We initially had a little testing camp where we had a lot of people come in and do testing. Okay. Then, I mean, we can go down a whole nother rabbit hole with that of, you know, how much did that help? Once again, remember, if someone's doing nothing, doing something's beneficial. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff. I think we could have done a lot more, maybe, you know, range of motion testing online, you know, through apps, I think would have been helpful. We did some there, so we got an idea, but honestly, you know, I think there's a lot to just like, look, you got to hit the ground running. And, you know, if I programmed something, I loved a one-arm snatch. Everyone was like, yeah, my shoulder's hurt and I'm not doing it. All right. I mean, I could spend 2 months, you know, trying to explain how we can do it and doing all this, or I can be like, that's 2 months. I just wasted you know, not wasted, but grind. I only have so much training time.
You could have reallocated that time, right? Yes. Waste might be a little over harsh, but in hindsight, it's always 2020. But yeah, like that's so relatable too. Like I always think of like every, like when I was in the Parisi Speed School, we would always have our seniors come in with like their freshman testing booklet. And I would look at the booklet and I'd say, cool, like now I know what movements your college strength coach really wants you to know. For you, if you walk in and you know how to do a hang clean, you're going to be a top-notch freshman because the strength coach wants the glory in getting you strong, but I can assure you that strength coach doesn't want to teach you how to hang clean with 20 other freshmen. So if you just have some level of competency in the movement, you're leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else. And it doesn't necessarily matter what you test because I live in Northern Vermont. No one strength trains here. There's no performance anything here. So if you're an athlete who's going to college just because you're really good at your sport, probably like a lot of these athletes at this, I mean, probably at almost every Olympic level, like they're probably playing so much of their sport. They're spending so much time in their sport that they're really, the performance side is marginal to anything. If it's going to actually, you know, have any carryover to why they're at the Olympic level. Like would you say for all these guys on bikes, like, did any of them actually train with any regularity that would have impacted their performance? Like, did anyone come in and you were just like, whoa, like, holy smokes, you actually train?
Yeah. With us, athlete Paris, she trained a lot. She has her own trainer, Ariel. Paris just loves training. So I think she did enough. But it was literally on the American side. And Nick Bruce, I bet Nick Bruce did a good bit. We worked together for a little while, and he was just a naturally kind of fit guy, and so I think he might have had enough. But if I look outside of America, Kieran Riley, really nice guy. I believe he got silver for men. He's a British rider. That dude loves training. And he is a big trainer, and you can see he's got a lot of stuff on Instagram and stuff. You can see him. I mean, you can tell that he goes at it. But there's other riders, we won't get into names there, that I also see on the Instagram training that I feel seeing them in person. I'm like, I can tell that you do train a good bit, but you're just not, getting the wins that you think you should be, when I've seen this other person not doing a darn thing and they're dominating you.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me, just like the idea of, like, I love the way you said it. Like, if they're not doing anything, something is going to move the needle. But how do you assess that, right? Like, do you even need to assess that? And I feel like saying it too, like, strength coaches will be like, "Oh, you don't test? Oh my God!"
No.
I'm like, no, it's not like that though. Like, obviously, there's so much context behind everything.
Yeah.
But you almost have to sometimes start people to get to a point where testing is going to be useful. Other than that, you're just testing to test.
You're
to
right.
Say you tested and whatever.
And I 100% agree. To where, I mean, there's a lot of these guys that I was like, look, we just got to get moving. Like, I'm not going to stop everything to do a test or to do this testing when you're not doing anything. Like we don't need to do like the very bare bone basics. I'm like, hell, body weight squats. Let's start doing some of that. Bulgarian squats with no weight. I'm like, that's something. We're getting the ball rolling. And then as we start to bump up against, if you're really complaining a lot about mobility issues or something, okay, now we can start doing testing here. Maybe there's some value in, gap analysis, between different riders of how do we know what to improve. But once again, that's going back to that. I don't think there's this like huge 1-to-1, they get stronger, they do better kind of thing carrying over. I think the people that I saw that trained a lot in the sport just love training and happen to do BMX. So and going back to that thing of the Olympics, I mean, you would be shocked the crap I saw in the Olympic weight room. Oh my God. I mean, it was like 1,000 gym fail videos and of these, like, just all over. I mean, I will say, a little biased, generally America tended to do better, but there was some craziness there too. But yeah, other countries where I'm watching them, like, I don't know your country. I'm worried you're going to get hurt. Like, you're just doing rando stuff right now.
Yeah.
And so it is crazy to think like, oh, you're representing your country. You are the best of the best. And this is what you're doing right now. And I actually talked with other strength coaches right afterwards. There's this strength coach summit. And I went to and kind of presented on what I did and what I learned. And there's other coaches there that honestly will tell you, like, work with an Olympic team, high level, and their strength coaches were more about performance and just saying, I don't really believe in a lot of extra strength stuff like months out from a major competition. I'm like, you mean like 2 months out, y'all aren't doing stuff? And they're like, no, we're winding it down, just dialing in on training. And I'm like, wow, that is interesting.
One philosophy.
Yeah, you're right. I'm like, well, that is one way to do it.
Yeah.
And as far as you might want to be like, well, that's not right. I'm like, well, he's got a team at the Olympics. He's here too. It's kind of hard to argue. So, but it does bring up the point where I'm like looking around thinking, okay, well, you've got this group that's training super hard in here and this one that's not. So maybe there's a certain level of these people who are going to be here because they're just good. I do think as you see sports where strength and conditioning starts to work its way in, you're going to start to see people that are strength training performing better. But especially, like I said, BMX, I mean, it became an Olympic sport in 2020. Prior to that, it was all 100% independent. Everyone did their own thing. So once it became an Olympic sport and you had these teams, now, we're starting to pay attention and everyone should start strength training. But until then, everyone was on their own. And if you didn't want to, you didn't care because you were your own standalone, entity. And so I'm just, there's some interesting stuff out there with strength conditioning. And that's really a good thing, for we could have a whole nother combo of, are they here because of this or are they here, in spite? And there was a lot of training that I saw too, that I was like, yes, they're here in spite of your horrible, horrible stuff you're doing. Because I don't know why, for some reason, in lifestyle sports, it just gives people this like artistic freedom to just really go kind of crazy out there. And I have seen like, the kneeling on a Swiss ball while doing, is like quick pulsing overhead presses type things. And like, well, see, it's kind of looks like there's sport. And I'm like, it looks like it also looks like a great way to kill yourself. I'm like, I
just because it looks like your sport that's not a quantifier.
Yes.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, your sport's going to make you better at the sport. Really, it's strength and conditioning. you think about like playing a sport like music, instead of having you do the same song over and over, if there's a part you're not good at, I'm going to isolate that one thing and make that better so that the whole thing can get better, and that's really what we're doing. I'm not trying to, one I'll reference, or a quote is, it needs to be athlete specific, sport relevant.
So, I like that one.
Yeah. So I got to credit to Jeremy Shepard. He's the strength and conditioning coach for Canadian free snowboard, if I'm correct. And if I got so much help from free snowboarders and free skiers, those guys are really a big help to me in the community of just similar athlete style. But yes, say that again. It is athlete specific, sport relevant. It should improve the sport, but specific to your athlete.
I'm stealing that one.
Go for it.
As someone who works where I live, there's trail running galore, professional ultra runners all around the place. And that is one thing that I've had a hard time explaining to these athletes is like, like you can improve your squats. It might make you run slower, but how do you convey that to someone who's expecting X, Y, and Z to happen from this much work or whatever? But I like that athlete specific, sport relevant. That's, gosh, that's just a training philosophy in itself right there.
It is. I know. I as soon as they said, I was like, "Ooh, that one's coming with me." And
that's the intro. That's how I know. That's the intro. We cut that. Okay. We put that. That's the intro clip. Pop producer Josh is going to put. He's going to cut out whatever buffoonery I said about being jealous of myself. Well, really, I just want to say I'm selfish, and I get to enjoy these conversations with people because I love them. Brian Roy, I appreciate you making time on a Friday afternoon, man.
Hey, it's all right, man. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you
had to wait for me. I had like crazy, like the school, like babysitters were gone. I was like, listen, I want to do this. I got to wait. You're so patient. We'll do a round two. You down for round two at some point?
Absolutely, yeah. Because there's so much getting into the tech. There's some really new tech coming out that we can start to analyze like powers of their jumps on a bike through video and stuff that I think is really going to change how we analyze the sport, and also breaking down, their learning skills. That was another one that I thought real leave people with a teaser is that I was working with Bryce and I'm like, Bryce, you're at this level, you're always making it in the finals, but we're not podium. How do we get there? And even with working with the coach, Ryan at the time, and just talking to other people, they're like, we just keep trying. And I'm like, keep trying? That's not an answer. That's, of course you keep trying, but what is our steps? And so what I've been working on too, with how do we figure out where you are, what are the best doing, where's this gap, so that we can now start to lay out of, you're doing this trick, but you're not laying it down consistently enough. And how can we do that? And so there's a lot more out there that, I'd love to have a round two.
Hell yeah, brother. We'll do a round two. I just made a new internet friend, guys. This is going to be so great. Hopefully someday we can be real life friends and meet each other.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, man. I mean, Vermont's beautiful. You're also welcome to come down to the beach, man.
I'll come down to the beach. Okay. I'll look out the window right now. It's like, I think 5 degrees. It just snowed last night. I had to shovel my driveway. Like, come on, I'm coming down to the beach, man.
Yeah. No, it hit like, we had a big cold front. It got to 40. And I mean, you would have thought like this is all hell's breaking loose. Like we were like, you guys are supposed to get like maybe
snow this weekend.
Boy, God, you want to talk about?
I don't know if that's true or not.
Let me tell you like a little bit of North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. It will be a Cat 2 hurricane, and I will see people out there with a case of beer and a lawn chair, and it will be a half inch of snow. And people are buying up all the ammo and bread, and like, this is it. And I'm like, y'all, it's gonna be okay. I mean, but no, we're like, we will rebuild. And I was like, it was a 1/4 inch of snow. It was gone in an hour. And no. But hurricanes, man, we'll all go down like that. They have to get rid of the food at the grocery store. They'll sell steaks for like 50 cents a pound or something because they're gonna lose power. And I mean, we'll just buy it, and we're just out grilling out. Oh yeah, trees flopping over. Whatever, dude. Not a care in the world.
Man. Built different. You put the wind up here, we're all like, oh, buckle down, get your generators out. Like we're down for the snow. I'm all hibernate all day. That's awesome, dude. This was an awesome conversation. I'm glad we were able to do this.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this has been great, man. We've just been flowing. And like I said, we definitely have enough stuff for round two, with practical stuff too. Like I said, I mean, I didn't realize a lot of people like you said at the beginning that, they're like, well, I don't work with BMX freestyle. You're going to work with alternative athletes and athletes that, don't fall in that system. And you might not need to take away like exactly, word for word what I said, but take my, reasoning for how I got there. Yeah. And I'm like, and you can apply that to anyone.
And that is the total vibe that, people who listen to the show with regularity, that is the total vibe that we bring, because there is more than one way to skin a cat. That is a quote my dad has always said to me.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it means. I don't know why we're skinning cats, but in strength conditioning, it's all about getting the athlete better to what is better for them, right? Like better performance, better consistency. Better might just be, hey, you know what? You played more games this year because you weren't hurt. That can just be better. Yeah. So I think we need to get away from the absolutism of strength conditioning means we put this many pounds on your lifts to what the actual performance metric means. And that's so individualized. There's so much context that we don't know from the outside. And but on the pod, we're able to talk the nuance, man. Like you're saying, like we're able to get into the story a little bit as to why it matters a certain way. So super cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dude. Appreciate you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.